Greetings, everyone, from Houston, Texas. Or want to say thank you to Aphasia Access for giving us this opportunity to talk with you a little bit for our 15 minutes today. So, Jackie, as soon as you get to the slideshow.
Do you see it?
Oh, okay. We got it. I'm Lynn Maher, and this is Jackie Freer. And you can go to the next slide is our disclosures, so you know not only where we work, but that we get paid for it. We can go to the next one. So we're going to just talk a little bit about how we dealt with this question about incorporating people with primary progressive aphasia into our aphasia center. Initially, we had, and that's the Houston Aphasia Recovery Center. Initially, we had some concerns about doing that because we were worried about, assimilating the individuals with a different kind of trajectory into our aphasia center, whether that would be a good fit, whether it would be good for them, and would it have an influence on the other people, the other participants with post-stroke aphasia. But on the other hand, we were really worried about what to do otherwise if we didn't include them, because especially for people in the mild to moderate phases of their aphasia, their primary progressive aphasia, there really isn't a good alternative for them. The adult centers that are available really don't meet their needs, and they have needs to continue to practice their communication skills, to use supported communication and to retain the gains that they make in speech therapy, lots of other needs of support as well. So we were worried about what if we didn't include them. Go ahead, Jackie. I don't see me, so I don't know if you can see me give you a signal, so thanks. So in the end, we realized that actually that the concern about, after having admitted a few pilot projects of pilot study, that the concern on the negative impact on other people with aphasia, the other participants, really wasn't justified. That really hasn't been a concern. And our groups are all mixed groups anyway. So there's a lot of choice at HARC, and people get to, within the size limitations, get to choose to participate in various activities, various conversation groups and activities, and we're managing different levels of aphasia severity and different types of aphasia already. So that really wasn't the issue. So we decided to go ahead and continue. Can we go to the next slide? Thanks. But what we did realize that we were lacking in our protocol was a way to measure behavior over time, because of the inevitability that at some point HARC would not be the right place for people with primary progressive aphasia as their aphasia becomes more severe, but more because of the additional behavioral challenges that occur with the decline. And so we needed a way to be able to track that behavior over time. We needed a way to be able to have that conversation up front with caregivers, significant others, and then be able to assess that over time. And so we made some modifications to our protocol, our intake protocol. Next slide, thanks. And in addition to doing the regular aphasia assessment, and identifying the type of aphasia, we wanted to be able to categorize the variant of primary progressive aphasia that they had. So we added the progressive aphasia severity scale by Sapolsky and colleagues, and Dr. Dickerson, Brad Dickerson, at the Frontotemporal Disorders Unit at Mass General. Mass General developed the PASS, and it includes a questionnaire so that you can get more detailed information from the informant. But what the PASS allows you to do, it's a scale that you can use based on the information that you've gathered through your assessment, where you can categorize the severity of the linguistic impairment, and chart that over time. And it's been shown to have good reliability. And so that's been very useful. So thank you to Dr. Dickerson and Megan Quimby at at the frontotemporal disorders unit for sharing that. And if you are interested in accessing the PASS, I've put on the slide here where you can contact them and request the materials, and they'll send you all the materials. It's really wonderful. And so you can access that if you decide to use it, and some references of support. Okay, and so now I'm going to turn it over to Jackie, because she's going. Next slide, Jackie.
Yep.
And so she's going to take you through the protocol. In addition to the PASS, we felt like we needed to add something that was specific to HARC and the required behaviors that are necessary to participate at HARC. And let me just say that HARC is a standalone aphasia center. We're not affiliated with a hospital. We're not affiliated. We take students from the University of Houston, but we're not part of the University of Houston. And so we're a standalone center. Our neighbors are a bank and a church. So we have some, things about participating at HARC that require a certain amount of independence. So we needed to add a way to track that behavior as well. Okay, now I'm going to stop talking, turn it over to Jackie Freer, who's the program director at HARC and who actually does all of the work. So Jackie, you take it away.
Thanks, Lynn. Yes, so Lynn gave an excellent introduction to the PASS and a little brief overview of our protocol. So yes, working at HARC and integrating people with PPA, we have over the years, we've kind of decided we need a more structured way on how to track severity, behavior, especially as they progress in their disease. So here's just a brief overview of what we got. So we definitely want to start with the PASS questionnaire, which is sent to caregivers. And this is just a little example of the questionnaire. So we send this out to caregivers to hopefully get their perspective on the person's language. So they may or may not be able to answer the questions, but it's very detailed and it's awesome and it's in layman's terms. So that's sent out to caregivers beforehand. And then once they've kind of seen that, they will come in for what we call an intake interview. And that's an interview with the participant and the caregiver. And not only does it help us get to know them, but it helps us hear their speech, get a little bit of a language sample. In addition, we want to do an aphasia assessment to, like Lynn said, just get some language scores in there. But the WOB is great for assessing different areas of language, but what we really need with people with aphasia, PPA, is finding out what variant they are. And so we added in the PASS ratings, which is we will take items from the questionnaire, the intake interview, the aphasia assessment, and then we can use the PASS ratings, and here's a little example of it, to then define it even more into their subtype. PPA has 3 subtypes, and that's incredibly helpful as a speech pathologist, working as a team to have a subtype. That way we can communicate that way. So they use numerical impairment measures, so it makes it very objective, an objective way to not only find the subtype, but also track over time the language progression. Mm-hmm. And so in addition to language and aphasia and all of that, we at HARC, their language progresses, but what may come along with the PPA as the years go by is we've seen some behavioral changes and some cognitive changes in addition to the language decline that at HARC in particular, we have a very small staff. So we found that we needed to create kind of a behavioral checklist in order to not only manage, but be upfront with the caregivers on any changes that we've seen in that aspect. And so we created this HARC participation behavioral checklist. And at the top here, we put it in numerical order as well. We have typical, mild, moderate to and severe. And underneath that, it kind of shows what goes along with what a typical person mild might look like. So it's the level of assistance they need. So from no issues to minimal assistance, minimal to mod to moderate to max. And we have to, I'm just going to briefly show you the next slide here, sorry. So we separate it into two areas, independence and behavioral regulation. So in the independence category, an example that I have from my experience at HARC, working with people with PPA, is a mealtime snack prep is a great example that we've seen. So we had a participant join us in 2015. He was able to go get his lunch, make it totally hands off. So he was a 0, gradually became a 1 when he needed just some cueing to go grab his lunch. And then as time went on, we noticed that he would grab his lunch but needed help utilizing the microwave. And then within the last year, he needed help with all the steps, from grabbing his lunch to using the microwave to even sequencing the order it took to eat his lunch. And so it became, and it would make him really anxious. So it was not great for him. And we didn't have the support, unfortunately, to help him with all of the steps every day. And so that's when we brought the caregiver in, and this gave us a great way to say, look, this is where he's at right now. This is something that we can't manage, but not just that, it's making him really uncomfortable because he knows we can't manage it. So it gives a tangible way to show a caregiver. And then under the behavioral regulation, we have more behavioral, emotional type issues. And so an example, especially in the agitation, emotional aspect, an example we have is that we have a participant with logopenic PPA who came to us, and I would say she started in the mild category. She would participate in groups, but needed occasional help by she would be in the mild category. We could just change the subject and she would stop crying or get back to the subject, and it was flowed pretty well. As she progressed, we would pull her out and give her a magazine. So she would be more in the moderate category. We'd give her a magazine, kind of let her calm down, and she'd come back into groups and be okay. So we would say she's responsive to intervention still. And then within the past year, she no longer responded to those interventions. Very tearful, very anxious. We were unable to get her back focused. And so again, not great for her, the anxiety, it was hard for us to watch her feel so anxious. So that was another time when we could talk to the caregivers and have a tangible resource would have been helpful in that. And then tips for behavioral management, some things that have helped us. And again, this is at HARC. This is what has helped us, but these are just some tips. We have the great resource to have volunteers. A lot of them are student volunteers. In the mild to moderate category, this really helps with the participant to assign them kind of a buddy. And that helps them with the occasional behavioral changes or the need for extra support. And one thing we found extremely important is from day one, providing education to the caregiver, being upfront to the caregiver and creating a relationship with them. Because we anticipate having difficult conversations in the future with the caregivers and family, being upfront and providing that education was really important. And then you create a relationship, and whenever you do have to check in, it's not awkward and it's not, it's easy. So highly recommending creating some sort of education protocol. And then, like I said, regular check-ins. And then our plan is to do a formal reevaluation every 6 months. So of our behavioral checklist and the past, to check in not only with behaviors, but language. And that's kind of our plan going forward. We really found that we needed something tangible, something objective and concrete to, as we're getting more and more referrals, like Lynn said, to help us create a streamlined process. And so if you have any questions or you want more information on our behavioral checklist, or just want to chat, here are both of our email addresses. Please feel free to reach out to us. And yeah,
Great.
I hope I kept it under 15. And
We're sorry you had to keep it under 15, because
no,
we
that's
know
okay.
that every one of these talks could go so much longer, but we're also, you know, we're going to find nuggets in about 57 talks over the course of these 24 hours, which I think is just really, really cool. Wondering about the intakes that you do and whatnot that you were mentioning. Does that is that a process, and forgive me if I missed this point, that brings folks, is meant to clean up, get a good glide path for people coming in? Does it result in you coming to the conclusion that some folks aren't the right fit at Hark and trying to help them find new resources? I think folks would be a little curious about perspective you could give on that.
No, right. That's a great question, because and I didn't mention this, but it gives us kind of a baseline for where they're at. So if their baseline is already falling in the severe category, especially for things like wandering around, those are kind of red flags that we would say, you know, this maybe isn't the best fit for you right now. But Houston's such a large city, we do have other resources that we can provide them with. So yeah, that's a good question.
And to continue the streak, if there's one nugget, what's the one that, if folks remember one thing of the last 15 minutes, besides the fact that you all could have gone on with a lot of value well beyond that 15 minutes, what's the one piece of knowledge you'd like to make sure we grab today?
Jackie, do you mind if I?
Go ahead, go for it.
Yeah, I think, honestly, from my perspective, I think I would say I do think that people with primary progressive aphasia can fit into our aphasia center activities depending on the nature of your aphasia center. I think we would just now, if we were to do it over again, we would start being a little bit better prepared for having those difficult discussions over time, and providing the additional support that not only the person with primary progressive aphasia, but their significant others need. So if we were to do it over again, we would have prepared a little bit better ahead of time, instead of having our participants with primary progressive aphasia teach us what it is we need to do. And I think that's what I would encourage you to take away from the talk.
Thank you so much.